So I had a doctor reach out on one of my videos and he said, I see a lot of case studies on married couples, but I don't see a lot on single individuals who don't plan on being married. Now, this individual is a 55-year-old doctor. And actually what I find unique about his situation is just what a fantastic financial situation he is actually in. So I want to go over his case study for you today. When we ran his initial plan through the planning software, it gives him a 100% chance of success. In fact, he's got a lot of good options before him. He could retire earlier. He could spend more. So I want to go through his plan and kind of give you some numbers that you can think about for your situation. Now, my name is Scott Caufield. I'm a CPA and CFA charter holder and the founder of Sophos Wealth Management. So a quick look, his total net worth is almost 6.3 million. Of that, 4.7 is investable assets. He's got a home that he owns without a mortgage. It's worth about 800,000. And then kind of a unique circumstance. He's been a great saver. Somebody's put a lot away. The one thing he does like to spend money on, or two things, are travel and cars. And he owns a collection of 5 or so cars that are worth almost $770,000. Now, we have not included those in his planning, but I do put them here on his balance sheet so you can see it. Sure, he could sell those and he could use that as an investable asset, but that's not really part of the initial plan, not something in the cards, nor is it something that he needs to do. Just wanted to make sure we mention it. We look at his scenario, making about $142,000 in self-employment income. A unique wrinkle for him is that he is getting disability insurance. He did mention that when he started getting this disability insurance, he definitely wishes that he had got a better policy. This does not increase with inflation. So he's getting $114,000 per year, and that is not going to go up over time, but that will last until he's 67. So obviously a unique wrinkle. You don't see a lot of people getting disability, let alone this much. However, he used to make a lot more when he was full-time. Now he's not working as much, doing kind of specialties. Of that income, he is saving about $77,000 into his taxable account. So his cost of living is not that high. He also is contributing the max he can to accept expenses. So he's spending about $100,000 a year. He's also got property taxes. He's got $1,000 a month of malpractice insurance. He's got about $400 a month of medical or health insurance. That's actually pretty low, kind of unique circumstance there. Most self-employed before 65 have to pay quite a bit more. So something to keep in mind for your situation. Okay, so in terms of his goals, one, he wanted to retire at 62. He'd probably spend about the same in retirement, although maybe more if it was an early retirement. We'll have healthcare come up in retirement. We've got long-term care costs, at least the last 2 years, end of life. And then he did want to replace one of his cars, get a new McLaren, predict that it costs about $150,000, booking that in for this year, next year, and potentially buy a new primary home. So go from his $800,000 house to a $1.5 million house. And that's something he'd probably just pay for out of his assets. When we put all that together, said, what does it look like? Not surprisingly to me, it looks pretty darn good. So Monte Carlo simulations gives him a 100% probability of success. So if he was to retire at 62, they don't think there's any chance he would run out of money. Now, obviously, when you see probability that high, it means you're probably being too conservative. And you could be more aggressive. You could spend more. You could retire earlier. But before we get to that, we'll just take a look at what does his situation look like. So you can see, for income sources, the primary source, even after he's retired, is going to be that disability. That's that green bar there. And then when that goes away, you've got Social Security helping out. So a unique wrinkle, very helpful to his situation. What is his withdrawal rate? It is just so low. At 62, you're only taking out a little over 1% of investable assets to supplement spending. When that disability goes away, you're still at a 1.89% withdrawal rate at 68. So you probably heard before, the 4% safe withdrawal rule, probably closer to 5% under more updated assumptions. We are nowhere near that. And that is really a lower bound of what you could probably comfortably spend. What if we stress test it a little? What if we assume investment returns like 2000 to 2010? So you had the tech bubble blow up from 2000 to 02. You had the global financial crisis, 08, 09. Under that kind of scenario, his withdrawal rate would still only be 2.56% under these kind of baseline assumptions at 68. Not a problem at all. In fact, if we go look at what does this scenario look like for his invested assets, well, still not going to run out of money. He'd end with nearly $20 million if he lived to about 90. So clearly, this is very conservative. And then, so we get into, what could you do instead? What do you want to potentially do instead? So one thing I showed him is, well, what if you retired immediately? What would happen then? Not surprisingly, he comes out looking quite good. It is still 100% chance of success. So, because of that disability income that's going to last until 67, and because he's already accumulated quite a bit of investable assets, just under his current spending, he's not expected to run out of money at all. If we just go look again, his withdrawal rate, it looks super high that first year because of the home and the car, but it is just super low. As long as he's getting that disability insurance. And even when that goes away, if he was to retire immediately at 68, his withdrawal rate is projected to only be 3%. So still comfortably below where it needs to be, even to feel very conservative and safe. So then we start getting into, okay, what could we do instead? How else could we maybe bump it up? What if we spent, instead of $100,000 a year, what if we spent $12,000 a month? So, and we retired immediately. What does that look like? Under a baseline assumption, he's still not expected to run out of money. In fact, that's not even baseline. That's 2000 to 2010. So with those poor decades of return, if he was to spend $12,000 a month, he is still not projected to run out of money. In terms of those probabilities, you're still all the way up at a 97%. And that's spending more than he really needs to. So it'd be very easy to dial it back. In fact, we would have to take his spending up pretty darn high before I think this plan would get to a point where it might give him a little bit more pause on the finances. In fact, there you go. So if he was to spend $17,000 per month and retire basically immediately, his probability of success would be 75%, which, by the way, 75% is still probably fine for a lot of people. Retire at 55 with a 75% probability. Sure, if you didn't have any levers you could pull, that might make you a little bit nervous. But in his case, he's spending over double what he's currently spending in this kind of plan. So, and you could do things in terms of pulling down the spending, in terms of changing the spending, some sort of guardrails type approach or other approach to bring down or bring up your spending when times are good versus bad that would, bump your actual probabilities higher. So that would be something that I think he could potentially be comfortable with, but you have to keep in mind, he expressed that he grew up without a ton of money and that one of his big core fears is the possibility of running out of money. But as we got more into his situation and kind of ran through the numbers, it was evident to me it's not the money that's keeping him from retiring. Because again, I think he could retire immediately. And even though this is maybe the first time he had seen that, I think there's another aspect that is holding him back from retiring. And it's not bad. It's that he's kind of enjoying his current life. He already travels a good amount. He's not working full time, although he's still working a fair amount, but he finds that work fulfilling. He's helping people's lives. He gets an identity out of being a doctor. That's a pretty venerated position in the community. There's a lot of, I think, self-worth that comes with helping people. And that's really important for people to realize, where they get their joy in life. We kind of talk through what it is that he wants. Is it an early retirement and just travel full time versus is it just kind of continuing to enjoy your life as much as possible? Yes, he can spend his increase in his spending now. He may not need to focus so much on trying to save as much, but if that's what kind of makes him happy, there's nothing wrong with doing that. These are great plans when it's nothing but good options. So some of the other kind of miscellaneous things that we talked about that are opportunities for him, one is around tax. Until he retires, his effective tax rate is pretty darn high. Even though, and something I should mention, those disability payments are not taxable. So his taxable income is actually pretty low relative to his cash flow. Nice problem to have. However, he will still have an opportunity the first few years of retirement where his effective tax rate, at least under current law, should be quite a bit lower. Now, it's during these trough years, say between when he's 62 and 67, 68, where he can think about some tax optimization strategies. Easy to do some Roth conversions in these years, easy to kind of plan on trying to realize capital gains in those years when you're at lower tax brackets. So, something to kind of just start thinking about for him, even though we're still a few years away. If he was to retire earlier, that effective tax rate bumps down much sooner. So then his kind of window would be immediately taking advantage of those tax opportunities. So something for him to think about. The other aspect that I kind of encouraged him on was trying to optimize his portfolio. He had a very risky investment portfolio, nearly 98% equities. Of the equities, they're like 60% in tech and tech-related stocks, even higher if you include tax weighting and index funds. So very, very heavy to equities, very heavy to tech. That's what's done really well in recent years. I would kind of argue that it's a scary proposition given current valuations today. Most of the long-term valuation metrics I look at say that the market is at or near its most expensive levels in history. Might expect some muted equity returns, at least in the US, over the next, say, 7 to 10 years. So kind of a word of caution there. These are great problems to have when you can spend more, you can retire earlier. But it's a key thing, I think, for everybody when you look at this scenario is what is going to provide you with happiness. For some people, it's retire as soon as possible. And that might mean you have to save a lot more. You might have to spend a lot less either now or in retirement. For some people, that means continuing working longer than you thought because that is something that you love and it gives your life passion and meaning and value. So, finding those things that make you happiest, give you the most meaning, and then optimizing your financial plan to try to best fit that. That's what really the best value of planning can be. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate if you like my video, subscribe to my channel, and share with anyone you think would benefit.